being 4 o'clock, we're going to call the meeting to order. And in calling the meeting to order, we recognize that Prince Albert is located within Treaty 6 territory and is homeland to the Dakota and the Métis. We extend our respect to all Indigenous people for valuable past and present contributions and recognize and respect the cultural diversity within the city of Prince Albert. So I'm looking for a motion for approval of the agenda. Councillor Miller.
I'll move the agenda, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. The vote is open. Carried and accepted. Any declaration of conflict of interest, please file those. And, oh, yes. Councillor Miller.
I do have a conflict of interest on your vacated residential lots, so I'll be removing myself from the room.
Noted, thank you. And I'm looking for a mover for adoption of the minutes. Mayor Dion.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. Vote is open. Carried. Delegations, we have none. Consent agenda, any items to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're looking for a motion. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. Vote is open. Carried. Reports of administration. We have 7.1 Cloverdale road upgrades and a verbal presentation. Just going to arm the microphone. Podium. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm Marcel Garreau. I'm the Surface Works Manager with the city. And the purpose of this report is to give options on the rehabilitation of Cloverdale Road to improve the level of service, reduce dust, and reduce maintenance for that road. A little bit of background on that road is that it's about 10 kilometers long, and about a quarter of it is in the city, 3/4 in the RM, and it connects Highway 55 to the Pulp Mill Road. And of the city's portion, 1/3 of that is flanking a residential subdivision, so roughly 1 kilometer. And the RM is responsible to maintain their portion, and the city is responsible to maintain theirs. It connects, as I said, the Pulp Road and Highway 55. This is the only road that goes north-south aside from the Pulp Mill Road and Highway 2 that going through the provincial forest. The RM classifies it as a municipal road. It carries primary weights during the winter and summer months, and there's a spring ban in the spring, which the city also does as well. It is maintained weekly with a grader on a weekly basis, and the RM does that as well, weekly basis grading. Doing recent counts for this report, there's about the annual daily traffic. So about 300 cars per day travel on Cloverdale Road going north-south. About 70% of them are through traffic. That means they don't go into the subdivision, and about 30% do. So that's roughly 90 cars go into the subdivision, 210 cars go through to the RM. And about 10 to 20% of that is trucks. So you have about 30 trucks per day, big trucks going north-south on Cloverdale Road. So going to some more road restrictions. It's important to note that it is the only road that goes north-south. For 10 kilometers to the east, you would find the Pulp Mill Road, and 5 kilometers to the west. So it is important to keep that north-south for those 30 trucks per day, as it provides a way for local goods to be going from north to south. Cloverdale Road is a structure. It's basically how they built roads back in the day is just what's in situ material, so that's sand and clay of what was ever was there. So there is a few areas that are prone to failure. And over the years, we have put base material over the few silt and clay pockets that are getting better with time, especially in more recent years. But because it's a gravel road and it's only a secondary road, it's still prone to having maintenance issues that's why it's maintained on a weekly basis. The residential section is a lot better than the non-residential section that the city operates, because we put more maintenance into that section. So going into solutions for this road, if we're only talking about the residential section that's beside the residence, we could put down an application of asphalt millings, 4 to 6 inches of asphalt millings, because the subgrade in this location is actually decent. We can put material directly over it. We don't have to do any substructure reconstruction. So the benefits of using asphalt millings is that it reduces dust by about 75 to 95%. So doing that, the concerns from the residents would be eliminated for dust suppression. The maintenance cost for actually running graders would drop about 3/4, so we'd have 75% cost reduction in maintenance on that 1 kilometer section that's flanking the residents. And we'd have a more consistent service, less washboarding, much less rutting, because we're actually building up the road 4 to 6 inches. It doesn't improve the subgrade doing this, but it does make it a lot better, since the subgrade is okay in this location. If we're going to the railroad tracks more north of the subdivision, then we'd want to do something more. And asphalt millings is a byproduct of the road recapping program. When we go to repave roads, we remove a thin layer of asphalt that exists, and the cost of doing this is already borne by the asphalt program. So it's a lot cheaper to use material that we produce as a byproduct than it is to go buy brand new granular materials. One note on that is that we produce about 5,000 tons of millings in a year, just through our normal repaving of roads. And our roadways divisions uses about half of that, 2,500 tons of millings per year. And we use that to, build things, water main breaks, road failures, winter patches, a bunch of roads that we have that are built with millings. And to maintain those, we need about 2,500 tons a year. So that leaves about half of the material that we could use for other things, like doing Little Red Road and doing parking lots and clay pit roads, keep the dust down there. We do use all the millings almost every year, so it's important not to overextend ourselves on the millings. So the cost to place these millings on just the residential section of Cloverdale Road would be $65,000. And that's putting a cost to zero to the material, because the cost to create the millings is borne by the asphalt program. And that would cut the maintenance cost by $2,400 a year. The current cost to grade Cloverdale Road on a weekly basis is $10,000 a year. So some alternative solutions to doing the millings. There's the status quo, which is grading weekly, $10,000. We could do dust suppressant. The entire section, you'd have to do it twice in a year. So it'd be $12,000 per application, $24,000 for the first year, and then you have to follow up a third time the next spring. So in total, it'd be about $32,000. And then you would have to keep doing that every so often. So it's kind of a more expensive long-term solution, and its success is not guaranteed because it's dependent on the surface material. I don't recommend that, but it is an option. And then another option would be to upgrade the road to primary weights, which would be very expensive, but it is an option. It would be about $900,000 just to upgrade the city-owned portion. That's that 1/4 of the road all the way to the RM. But there'd be no point in doing that unless the RM was doing it too. The city portion that's just in the residential area would be $315,000. But again, I wouldn't recommend that one. There's better options. So the recommendation, of course, is to take the milling program for Cloverdale Road and take that to budget for budget deliberations. Questions?
Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Any questions? Mayor Dion.
I have questions, but I also moved the motion. First of all, we're only talking about the residential. I don't
Yep.
know. We're not talking about anything else. And we did want millions, that's what we requested for thanks. The other options we already knew was $1 million, so you said 900,000, so $1 million, so we were close. So I'll move this recommendation.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I definitely supporting the recommended motion, and I think it's, better to look at a long-term fix, short of changing the road up to $1 million. I like the idea of using our millings as you mentioned. It'd be simply just moving it from one job site to and then spreading them out along the road. But I do have a question about this section. I mean, are we gonna do this work is the RM going to address the rest of the road, the 1.68 kilometers? Are they doing anything? Any plans to do anything?
The first 900 meters, which would be the residential section that we operate, that would be the 65,000 is to upgrade that portion. The next portion that goes all the way to the RM limit or the RM start, I should say, and crosses the railroad tracks. That's about a 1.5 kilometers, and that one has a lot more areas. But consulting with the RM, they don't have any complaints from their residents about the road because they don't live directly on it like our residents do. At this time, they're not doing anything to their section. I know this year they are building up one of their curves, but it would just be like normal maintenance practices like we do to fill like low spots.
A little bit about the servicing as well. Like you mentioned that it's graded weekly, but you also included that the RM grades it on a weekly basis? We
Yeah.
don't?
Well, their own portion,
Oh, they're in portion.
yeah, not
So-
ours.
So,
Yeah.
but we're responsible for that 1 kilometer, and our graders are on that.
Yeah, well, we have 2.5 kilometers roughly, or I forget what the number is. But we have the residential section, and then the next 1.5 kilometers over, up to the past the railroad track, that's all ours. But just where the city limit lands.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any other questions.
Mayor Dion.
So just to confirm, so we're talking millings up to the train tracks? Because that's where the residents end. If you go to the
Just
train
before
tracks,
that.
you look right, Ray lives right there. Next door to him is Lauren. There's 3 homes right there.
We'll go to the edge of the subdivision. So not quite the railroad tracks, just if you're passing if you're driving north, you pass Valley View Road, you pass Evergreen, and then you go all the way to the edge of that last person's property, just past his property of the residential City of Prince Albert
So you're
residential
talking
property.
from here to the tracks won't be
So
done.
not quite to the tracks, that would add quite a bit more distance.
Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation and the well-written report. My question really has to do with some information in the report, so I just want to clarify so that moving forward, I understand that information. We talk about $10,000 per year to grade, and so I just want to make sure that that amount of money, when I see that in a report, what does that entail? Why don't you fill me in on what that amount covers?
For sure. So running a grader on, say, a weekly basis would take about 2 hours, or just run a grader through there. So that's about $300 per pass of a grader. So if you're doing that on a weekly basis, and you do that for roughly 32 weeks in the summer, spring area, that'll get you to somewheres like $9,000. Just running the grader, bringing the material,
So in running the grader, you're putting in the employee that's running it and their benefits?
and the machine and the benefits.
And then the wear and tear of the machine, because at,
Yeah,
at
all that.
budget time, we get the 6% about, so I'm just really want clarification. The 10,000 is overarching, complete budget amount.
Yeah, it would be what's charged, and it's under our maintenance budgets, so it's all built into that maintenance amounts that we have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have a couple of comments. Thank you for the presentation. I do hear a lot of, I get a lot of phone calls about Cloverdale Road being a concern and asking for, you know, more work, more repair, that it's a road that, as you mentioned, has deteriorated sections. And so I am in favor of this motion. One, on sub 2, we talk about roadway sections in Nordale, and so I have heard from many residents, they are concerned that years ago that some sections of Nordale millings were used to start the work, but it hasn't been completed yet, and that was the expectation of the residents, is to finish those areas that had started with millings and have not yet been completed with millings. And so I am hearing from residents in Nordale that they are very much wanting sub 2 to happen, to come to fruition, to have those millings to be able to complete Nordale as well. So I don't think, sub 2 is Nordale. So that is those are my comments. I think that's fair to say from the residents. I know the mayor hears the same comments as well. And so I'm in favor of this motion, but I need to make it clear that residents of Nordale are very much wanting that expectation to be met, to complete that work with millings. Mayor Dion.
No, just pass it on, and that was part of my other motion too, that Nordale has to understand it'll be 2 to 3 years. It's not gonna happen overnight because we only produce so many millings. So we're going to do Cloverdale Road first, and then if there's anything left, we're going to Nordale, and then the following year, it'll all be Nordale. So I know they want it, I just said you gotta be patient because we only produce so much. But I do have another question, okay? Because if we're using all this, then we must be reusing, a few years ago, we were convinced at a council to buy this machine that makes asphalt out of our millings. Are we still using that machine? I see it's sitting up on a perch, but the weeds around it are probably as big as it. So that concerns me because we spent tens of thousands of dollars buying that piece of equipment. And I have no issue if we're not using it, then we can sell it. But I just want to know, are we using it? Because we were told it would save us on buying cold mix. Well, now I understand we're not buying cold mix anymore, we're using shavings. Are we using shavings in this machine? That's my question.
I'm going to put the correct question to the director. Director.
Thank you, Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor. So the short answer is no, we have not been using it this year. We have used it in the past for a number of years for specific patches and work. But no, it's not getting used.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. The vote is open. Carried. 7.2, thank you. We'll move to vacant residential lot program with a verbal presentation. Director, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity. The report in front of you today is in regards to a vacant residential lot program that was developed as part of the 2022-2023 budget discussions. You'll recall at that point in time, we reestablished or relooked at our base tax, which at the 2022 rates was $772. Now, that was increased to $1,600 in 2023. Since that time, we generated approximately $146,000 from that additional revenue, base tax coming to the city. The intention of that money is to go into a reserve. Once a appropriate program is developed, that is when that will take place, and that money will go into a reserve to be created. So following that budget discussion, we were directed to bring forward an incentive program for purchasers of these residential lots to assist in the development of a house on that lot or a building on that lot. And the intention is for the money within that reserve to help to fund or help to incentivize development. There are currently 221 vacant properties within the city of Prince Albert. That excludes city land within city subdivisions. There's an additional 139, so that's a total of 360 properties. What we're suggesting, the fundamental ideas or criteria that is developed in my report is to incentivize development on all of the privately owned land. So this would not include city-owned properties. My recommendation to not include city-owned properties is simply we have control already over that land. We've incentivized development through a reduction in price, and council has that option moving forward. So I don't know that. Plus we don't pay taxes on our own property, so we don't fund that potential reserve as well. So the intention of this program would be to incentivize development to properties that pay into that fund on a yearly basis. So all things being equal, we can expect to see approximately $140,000, $145,000 go into that reserve. Obviously, as these properties get developed, they're not vacant anymore and they won't contribute, but of course they'll contribute in other ways, and that is through tax dollars, which obviously goes above and beyond what we're getting through the vacant tax program. So my recommendation is that we bring back to you a program for formal approval by City Council that includes the following criteria. Firstly, that the owners of residential vacant property within the City of Prince Albert shall qualify for a $10,000 grant upon the development of the subject property, excluding the following locations. So all vacant property excluding the following: lots within city-owned residential subdivisions, which I spoke to already, lots within privately owned residential subdivisions that have been vacant for less than 3 years. Finally, privately owned lots that have been vacant due to a building demolition for less than 3 years. I want to touch on those for just a moment. When you develop a privately owned residential subdivision, my recommendation is it would be unfair of us to tax them immediately following the subdivision. They need time to sell their property. They need time to market their property, and I think it would not be realistic of us to expect them to develop these properties immediately. So what I'm recommending is essentially a 3-year waiting period before that vacant tax goes into place. Number two, we have had people come forward simply saying that they don't want to demolish their properties that are in disrepair because they're paying less taxes now than they would if they demolished them. So I don't want to de-incentivize demolishing these unsafe properties. So what we're recommending there is, again, giving that 3-year waiting period. You demolish your property, you've got 3 years to market it, to plan for development of it before you start getting taxed that vacant residential amount. Only properties classified as residential will qualify. We'd obviously keep a live map that we can reference to you, City Council, at any time. A single owner could qualify for multiple properties. I don't think there's reason to limit the amount of incentive. So essentially, we're looking at one incentive per building. Ownership does not come into play. We would obviously review the balance of the reserve and the effectiveness of the program annually and report back to council. And the grant would only be payable upon commencement of construction. So we want assurances that construction will actually move ahead. This was a public budget discussion, as you'll recall. I've had some inquiries about it. I've had 2 or 3 people approach us that are actually wanting to build right away in 2023. So I think the strategy behind it is an effective one, but I'm looking for your input, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Mayor Dion.
Well, I just want a clarification on something you said, because I might have voted the wrong way on this policy. I understood that we added $1,600 taxes to all vacant lots, but you didn't say that. You made it sound like if we were charging $800 on that lot, it went to $1,600. Am I wrong? Did we add a pure $1,600 on all vacant lots?
Director.
I believe the base tax now is $1,600, not on top of what was already being taxed. It got bumped up from $772 in 2022 to $1,600 for 2023. So that's a rise of $900.
Yeah, but I thought it was 1,600. I thought we were adding 1,600. That's my mistake for not paying attention. So really, my goal was to create all this money, but we didn't create it because we already were collecting half of it. Okay. Thank you.
City Manager.
We did create $146,000. So we did create that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate the incentivization of that tax that we have added. I like the idea that we are getting people to invest in their, in an account that they will benefit from. So I do see this working and working well. So thank you very much.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did receive some calls with some concerns about being taxed higher than their homes are taxed, for sure. How many developments are we hoping for each year with this $10,000 incentive?
Director.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, if we're looking at trends right now, you know, we're not getting people knocking down our doors to develop homes. You know, we're certainly flourishing in other areas, but homes is not one of them. We've had a handful of new homes developed in 2023, and that is showing to be on the rise in 2024. It's difficult to put a number to it, obviously. What I will say, however, is that we get a lot of questions about incentives. We get a lot of questions about what the city can do for me, for my vacant lot, because I don't want to develop it. Not only is that incentive for the current owner of the home, but it's also an incentive and somewhat a marketing tool for that person if they wish to sell that property, which I think is important. So I don't have a number of exactly how many homes will be built because of it, but I think it is a good incentive that'll push people in the right direction. And I have had some people ask about it. So if that's any indication, I think there's a lot of interest.
So I think that if we're creating $140,000 a year with this, that we should make it a bigger incentive to, rather than 10,000, make it larger. So we do actually see some development, because I don't think 10,000 bucks is gonna do it. We're not selling lots right now. We're not seeing a whole lot that way. So why not spend that money instead of having $1 million in the bank in 10 years, which we're gonna be in the same boat? Why not look at spending the whole amount? And I don't think we're gonna see 14 homes developed on this program of $10,000. Just a thought, but I think we need to increase it so we see some development.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, and I want to kind of reiterate some of those comments. I'm happy we see something here to bring some incentives to move some properties, and hearing the number 360 properties, that's quite a bit. I do worry a bit. I'm glad to hear that you did address a few things in there that we're not going to decentivize tearing down homes. So if they need to be torn down, then they should. I'm happy to hear that this doesn't touch that or addresses that. Also, that we're going to look at it every year, because I do think, agree with Councillor Edwards, that is this enough? Is this enough incentive or attraction to make some movement? So I do worry about the cost, though, and I think, you know, I'm more optimistic that I feel people will be accessing this, and so do we have enough, you know, monies in the pot? I do have a question about that, though. So this $146,000, was this generated based on the anything above the 772 that we had changed? Okay, so, and this is what we can see or expect to see year after year? This is going to change next year?
City Manager.
It will change as the properties get built on, the number of vacant lots should be reduced, right?
Right.
So the number will continually, we hope, because that's the point of the incentive, is to reduce that amount so that the vacant lots are being built on.
Okay, thanks for that. Yes, that answered all my questions, I guess.
Mayor Dion.
Okay, so I'll add a few comments to Councillor Edwards, brings up some good points, but I'll explain why we did the program that we did. And actually, we were, in our discussions, going to put a cap on to do only 10 lots a year to start, and then once we get down to the tougher lots, to go to 15 and incentivize it that way. Because I've already got 4 calls, and I think he's got 3 or 4 calls. So I think 10 for this round is the right number. And the reason that we didn't spend the 140 is if we, right away, say this year we sell 10, okay? We're not going to have enough money next year to do 10. So that's why we kept the 40,000. Okay, it's created 140. Let's do 10 houses. That's 100,000. Leaves us 40. Because every time one of those houses sell, that fund is going to reduce and reduce. And we didn't want it to be done in 2 to 3 years. We have no money because we've sold all of the. It brings it down that we couldn't give 10. You know, so our deal was to cap it at 10 for the first year and see how we turned out. If it turned out great with 10, then we try it again. If not, then we jump it to 15 and then keep going up there till we got rid of the lots. But we didn't want to spend all the money strictly because it's not a pool that's going to grow. The more successful the program is, the quicker the pool is going to shrink. And so we were thinking of trying to hang on to it for a couple of years so we get rid of the most amount of lots that we could.
Councillor Edwards.
So that's pretty optimistic. I hope you're bang on with the 10. So if it's that strong of program, why couldn't we look at, I mean, the homes are going to be taxed right away. Why couldn't we put in half of their property taxes that were going to be generated back into the program to continue going? Not sure. I understand we need the revenue, but if it's going to be that good, it's something to consider.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll open the vote. Vote is open. Oh, carried and accepted. We are efficient today. Unfinished business, I believe we have none. Do we have any motion for adjournment? Oh, and anyone mind knocking on the door for Councillor Miller? The motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
We'll just give Councillor Miller a moment maybe while I pull up the vote.
I move to adjourn.
So we have a motion for adjournment, ready to vote. Vote is open. Carried. I'm proposing a 30-minute break at this time. We're adjourned.